So, I've made a few of these Q&As this year, and I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. Just starting to. So without further ado, let's answer some questions. Who are the best villains in Thomas? I would say Frankie and Hurricane. I love how Hurricane is clearly the bronze of the duo who just pushes Thomas around, quite literally, but also has a hint of a good side. While Frankie is just a complete maniac. Thomas tells Frankie, "My name is Thomas, Frankie." And Frankie's just like,
"Get some more slag, little tank engine."
There's also this moment where Frankie says that Thomas is her, quote, favorite new engine. So, who else worked there before? We may never know. Who is your favorite Railway series character? Percy, Gordon, and Henry are all incredibly strong characters in the books. Now, if we're talking Railway series exclusive characters, I'm gonna have to go with Lord Harry from the Coldy Fell.
Rubbish. I'm up to date, that's all. I can go twice your speed in perfect safety.
I smell bullshit.
Harumph.
Which Diesel character is your favorite? Salty. What's an interaction you wish to see in a Thomas story? Daisy and James. I can only imagine how much their personalities would clash. Name a Thomas character that deserves an episode. Bulstrode the Barge. I'd love to see a redemption story with him. What are your thoughts on the Brenner era? If I could describe the Brenner era in one phrase, it would be a breath of fresh air. After so many dull and repetitive seasons, it was so nice to see something different. The writing got better, the cast got bigger, and the world building got more interesting too. One thing I really admire about the Brenner era is that it didn't just throw away bad ideas, it made bad ideas work and turned them into genuinely good stories. Many people argue that Charlie was an annoying character, but the season 17 episode, Nod Now Charlie, actually told a pretty good story with him. And some might say that Belle being an engine with water hoses is a rather gimmicky idea, but episodes like Toad and the Whale did a great job at using a character like Belle in a meaningful way. I should also mention how well the Brenner seasons handle Annie and Clarabelle. The Brenner era did a great job with its action sequences too. While I do believe that the Nitrogen era had great crashes, arguably better than the Brenner era did a better job at building tension. Slow Steven and Terrence Breaks the Ice are two of the best examples of that. Of course, the Brenner era is not perfect. Those gags with Sir Topham Hatt can be a little much sometimes, and there are of course some bad episodes here and there. Steamy Stafford, Henry Spots Trouble, the list goes on. But I'm not going to spend too much time nitpicking the Brenner era because, quite frankly, every era has its flaws, including the classic series. I'm looking at you, Fruitful Day.
That means we learned a lot today, and therefore, we're really useful engines after all.
If I had to rank the Brenner seasons, season 20 would be the highest, having some of the biggest standout episodes of the entire series, while season 17 would be the lowest. I talked about this before, but I do believe that season 17, while still a great season in its own right, did kind of feel the growing pains of the eras that came before it, and the other 3 seasons rank somewhere in the middle. I'm just so glad that we got to enjoy the Brenner era as long as we did, going so far as to even adapt the Railway series again. Truly, in my opinion, a breath of fresh air. What are the top 5 Railway series stories that you wish were adapted into the show, and what era would they be for? Now, I'll be honest, it'd be pretty difficult for me to be able to determine what era I'd want to adapt them in, but if I had to pick 5 stories to adapt for the TV show, I would pick Gordon Goes Foreign, Devil's Back, Super Rescue, Cab Over Wheels, and Thomas Comes Home. In fact, I wouldn't mind adapting the whole book, to be honest. If Thomas Comes Home, as in the entire book, was adapted to the TV series, I think that it would translate quite well. Not only would we get a cool visual of the bridge collapsing, but we would even get a cool redemption story for George of all characters.
We'll get some peace at last.
And the person who posed this question said that they would pick triple header, which, I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty good choice too. Harry, Ron, or Hermione? I don't necessarily have a favorite per se, but I will say this. I'd want Ron to be my friend since he's the most likable, have Hermione on my side if I'm in a bad situation and have time to prepare, and have Harry on my side if I need to be protected and don't have time to prepare, since he's the best fighter. How would you feel if Thomas and Friends was produced by Tim Burton? Well, it'd be better than All Engines Go, that's for sure. But in all seriousness, this raises an interesting question. What would a Tim Burton Thomas look like? I'll start off by saying that Journey Beyond Sodor is probably the closest we've ever gotten to the Tim Burton style. Seeing how Burton has adapted other books into movies, I do think that he would have a lot of respect for the source material, but also take a lot more creative liberties than, say, Britt Allcroft and David Mitton. The visuals would probably look a bit like Peter and Gunvor Edwards' illustrations. The sets would probably look a lot less realistic and a bit more fantastical. And the stories themselves would probably be grittier too. Notice how most Thomas episodes have happy endings, even more so than their Railway series counterparts. In fact, two of the only standalone episodes that don't have happy endings are Duncan Gets Spooked and Rusty and the Boulder, which both have more ambiguous endings. And I think that these two episodes give us a glimpse at what a Tim Burton Thomas would look like. You don't see any pretty flowers, though there is a certain beauty to be found here. I do think you'll still see the quaint countryside and happy-go-lucky episodes in a Tim Burton Thomas. It's not like they wouldn't exist, but I do think that we'll see more of those gritty episodes with ambiguous endings, as well as those creepy winter episodes like Jack Frost. Now, would a Tim Burton Thomas be good? I think older fans would love it, as we would go back to stories that play with our emotions, as well as some comedic banter here and there. But I don't know if the Tim Burton look would necessarily appeal to younger kids, who are the target audience after all, unless he drastically changed his style or something. What are your thoughts on Big Fish by Tim Burton? I really liked it. The characters and visuals are great, and it definitely felt like a movie where you escaped into a fantasy that you were never sure is real or not. I like how William Bloom starts off being tired of listening to his father's stories, but later on realizes the value that stories can carry, even if they are not 100% true to reality. When I first saw the movie, I remember thinking that Edward and Sandra's romance was a little cheesy. I mean, come on, he toiled working in a circus, cleaning up elephant poop with no pay for 3 years just to find out her name. But after having watched the movie to the end, I realized that their relationship probably didn't happen that way literally, and that it, much like most of Edward's other stories, is embellished. And there is a certain beauty in the embellished way in which these stories are told. I've always interpreted the fish as being a metaphor for the continuation of stories that pass down from generation to generation. These stories, much like the fish, are immortal in a way. I love how Edward Bloom has so little fear. When he first met Carl the Giant, he was literally like, "Eat me, come on, eat me." And when he left Spectre without his shoes, he was like, this'll be pretty painful. Of course, he claims that this lack of fear is because he saw through Jenny's eye how he would die, and he would think, this isn't how I go. It's actually kind of hilarious. Another thing I liked is how much Edward Bloom continued to value the town of Spectre, even in its old and abandoned state, and even decided to restore it. He did, as Jenny said, keep his promise of coming back. It kind of makes me wonder if Spectre was really as amazing and beautiful as Edward claimed it to be when he was young, or if it was just nostalgia making it appear that way. Jenny, to me, seems like the opposite of Edward Bloom. While Edward is very optimistic, Jenny is very jaded. Even after Edward and the Giant rebuilt her house, it eventually went back to its old deserted state, and it seems like she was never able to let go of Edward. I do have my gripes with this movie. I do wish it was explained how Edward and Sandra actually met, assuming that the embellished version isn't actually true. And I'm not gonna lie, if I was William Bloom, I would be so pissed at Edward even after finding out the truth. I mean, imagine if your dad never told you the true version of how things happened. All that being said though, this movie is very sweet. And like most Tim Burton movies, it felt like a great form of escapism. Which Thomas character would you compare Hermione from Harry Potter to? Now this is an odd question, but I would say Emily. Now, I wouldn't say Emily is like Hermione all the time, but one episode where she very much is Thomas, Emily, and the Snowplow. In this episode, much like Hermione, Emily's very quick to correct Thomas on pretty much everything.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. You do it then if you're so clever.
And even if Emily's intentions were good, Thomas is put off by her and doesn't want to listen, not only because of what she says, but by how she says it. And of course, over time, Thomas learns to listen to Emily when she has something important to say. Learning the hard way, of course, while Emily learns to behave in a way that gets others to listen. Emily can definitely be a know-it-all. She is bossy and far from perfect, but she's very quick to protect others that she cares about. At least Tim Burton will have more respect for the source material than Mike Newell.
Harry, you put your name in the cover of the fire.